In the history of cinema, there are films that made headlines, broke records, or reshaped genres. But there's another category: films that disappeared before they could even leave a mark. These are the projects whose original cuts were seen only once, in darkened screening rooms filled with tension, confusion, or even outright horror. After that one fateful viewing, they were never shown in that form again. Sometimes it was a test screening that went so badly, the studio ordered a complete overhaul. Other times, it was a private director's cut, screened only for producers who were horrified by what they saw. In rare cases, the footage provoked such strong reactions that entire endings were reshot, characters were removed, or timelines restructured. The original versions, locked away, destroyed, or simply forgotten, and yet rumors persist. Viewers who were there claim to remember scenes that no longer exist. Crew members talk of entire subplots that vanished from the final release. In some cases, the directors themselves disowned the theatrical cut, having lost all creative control after that one screening. What could have happened in that first showing? What did the audiences see or feel that made the studios say, "No one else can ever watch this"? Today, we're not looking at banned films or lost reels, we're diving into something even more elusive. 15 films that were shown in their true form only once before that truth was buried. From cult horror to Oscar bait, from experimental art house to mainstream blockbusters, these movies share one strange bond. What you saw in theaters was not what was originally intended, and in some cases, that original version may have only lived for one night, before being cut, re-edited, and in one case, allegedly destroyed. Let's unlock what we were never meant to see. A Clockwork Orange, 1971, the version Kubrick buried himself. Before it became a cultural lightning rod, A Clockwork Orange existed in a longer, harsher form. Kubrick screened that version once for Warner executives, a cut that lingered on every act of violence, every humiliation, every piece of irony stripped bare. When the lights came up, the silence was suffocating. Kubrick quietly withdrew the film and began trimming it himself. The new version was leaner, more stylized, and more controlled. It was also safer. After a wave of copycat crimes, Kubrick pulled the film from UK theaters entirely. For decades, it could only be seen abroad. The original longer cut, the one only a handful of people ever watched, was never shown again. Some say Kubrick wasn't censored by the studio, he censored himself. He understood something terrible. Sometimes, the truth is too powerful to survive its creator. Alien 3, 1992, the director who lost his own debut. For David Fincher, Alien 3 wasn't a beginning, it was a baptism by fire. The young director delivered a rough cut built on dread and fatalism, the most uncompromising version of the series yet. It was screened once for executives. They hated it. No action, no hope, no crowd-pleasing alien battles, just grief and decay. Fincher was locked out of the editing room. The film was recut without him, scenes removed, characters rewritten, and a new ending shot. The original screening version vanished, existing only in fragments and crew memories. Years later, the assembly cut gave audiences a glimpse of what might have been, but Fincher himself refused to endorse it. He said nothing publicly, because maybe there was nothing left to save. The story of Alien 3 isn't about a monster in space, it's about the monster that lives in every studio boardroom. The Devils, 1971, the film even its studio fears. Few films in history have been fought over like The Devils. Ken Russell's adaptation of real events in 17th century France was never meant to comfort, it was designed to provoke. When the original cut was screened privately for British censors, it was said to be overwhelming, bodies writhing in religious ecstasy, faith dissolving into frenzy. The reaction was instant horror. The BBFC demanded cuts. Warner Brothers demanded more. By the time it reached theaters, the film had been slashed, burned, rewritten, and buried. That first version, seen only once, contained scenes that reframed the entire story as institutional blasphemy. Russell called it the only honest version. The studio called it career suicide. Decades later, campaigns still plead for the release of that uncut film. Warner Bros. Refuses. Perhaps because, even now, the church and the screen remain closer than anyone wants to admit. Gremlins, 1984. The Christmas movie that once wasn't. Before it became a family classic, Gremlins was something far nastier. Joe Dante's original cut was grim, a holiday horror drenched in blood. In its first internal screening at Amblin, the gremlins didn't just cause chaos. They killed the dog, the neighbors. The tone was closer to Alien than E.T. Steven Spielberg watched in silence, then told Dante it was too much. Within days, reshoots began. The violence was scaled back, jokes added, and the entire film reframed as mischievous fun. The original version, screened once, never seen again, has since become an urban legend. Crew members claim it was terrifying, brilliant, and utterly unsellable. It's ironic. The movie that helped invent the PG-13 rating once teetered on the edge of an rated nightmare. Possession 1981, the film that broke its own audience. Andrzej Żuławski's Possession isn't just horror, it's hysteria captured on film. The original version, shown once at a European festival, lasted nearly half an hour longer than the one most know. It was an endurance test. More screaming, more silence, more time spent watching a marriage decay, until it became something inhuman. The screening left viewers shaken. Some applauded, some cried, others left mid-scene. Żuławski called it too much truth. Distributors called it unmarketable. The result? Brutal cuts, multiple versions, and a legacy of confusion. The version seen that one night included entire dream passages and religious symbols that made the story feel almost mythic, but that print vanished, surviving only in secondhand memory. Maybe it wasn't the film that broke. Maybe it was the people watching it. Natural Born Killers 1994. Original cut, screened once, then seized by censors. Oliver Stone's Natural Born Killers was already a media firestorm, but the version released in theaters was a heavily edited shadow of what was originally made. The first full cut screened privately for studio executives and censors was described as hallucinatory, vicious, and morally disorienting. It included longer sequences of murder set to abstract animation, a prison massacre filmed like a surreal dance, and extended monologues from Mickey and Mallory that blurred the line between satire and psychosis. The MPAA refused to approve the film, and the studio ordered major edits. That first screening is now the stuff of legend. It reportedly caused multiple walkouts, not from disgust, but because executives couldn't tell if they were being trolled or manipulated. The line between filmmaker and instigator was too thin. Only a heavily cut-rated version was released. Years later, a director's cut was issued, but even it lacks several sequences from that initial version. Those raw edits are said to be sealed in studio archives, unreleased and legally restricted. Was Stone trying to condemn violence, or was he complicit in glorifying it? That original screening never gave a clear answer. Event Horizon 1997. Original cut, shown once then vanished into myth. Event Horizon is a cult classic today, but the version you've seen is not the version that first existed. Director Paul W.S. Anderson originally delivered a cut over 2 hours long, brutal, relentless, and filled with disturbing imagery of hellish dimensions. That version was screened once for Paramount executives and a small test audience. The reaction was chaos. The audience reportedly recoiled at graphic scenes of mutilation, including a now infamous blood orgy montage showing the fate of the previous ship's crew. Executives panicked. Anderson was forced to cut nearly 40 minutes, including entire sequences that expanded the mythology and deepened the psychological horror. The footage, believed to be lost, thrown into a salt mine for storage, and damaged beyond recovery. Fans still hold out hope that someday, somehow, the hell version will resurface. But until then, we're left with scraps, rumors, and one haunting fact. What scared the studio most was never released except for that one night. The House That Jack Built 2018, original cut, played once at Cannes, then banned until recut. When Lars von Trier brought The House That Jack Built to Cannes, he didn't just return from exile, he lit a match to the festival's sense of morality. The full uncut version, shown in a single late-night screening, included scenes so brutal and prolonged that over 100 people walked out. Some called it disgusting, others psychotic. The backlash was immediate. Distributors refused to handle the film unless changes were made. Von Trier reluctantly agreed. The official release was a recut version, with several scenes trimmed or softened, yet even then, controversy raged. The original Cannes cut, with its full runtime and structure intact, has never been released to the public. Only those who were there that night have seen it in full. Some praised it as the purest expression of von Trier's dark vision. Others claim it was a cry for help. Was it cinema at its most fearless? Or proof that some visions are better left unseen? RoboCop 1987, original cut, too brutal for theaters, screened once for the MPAA. Paul Verhoeven's RoboCop is already infamous for its extreme violence, but few know just how far the original cut went. When it was first screened for the MPAA to obtain a rating, it featured graphic violence far beyond what eventually reached theaters. The death of Murphy was longer, gorier, with close-ups that made the MPAA physically recoil. A test screening held specifically for ratings board representatives became a whispered Hollywood horror story. Verhoeven deliberately pushed the boundaries, believing the violence had to be overwhelming to make a satirical point. But the reaction was immediate. The film was slapped with an X rating, and Verhoeven was ordered to cut it down. He did 7 times until it was finally approved. That original version was only ever screened once, never released, and reportedly no complete copy survives. Even the unrated director's cut available today is missing a few infamous frames that remain locked in the archives or possibly destroyed. Was it too intense for the 1,980 seconds, or was the violence exactly what it needed to be? The Magnificent Ambersons 1942, original cut. Orson Welles' masterpiece, butchered forever. After the critical success of Citizen Kane, Orson Welles delivered The Magnificent Ambersons, a brooding, melancholic tale of decline and loss. His original version, clocking in at 131 minutes, was screened for RKO executives and a small preview audience. Their reaction, uneasy silence. Executives panicked. Welles was away filming in South America and had no control, as the studio cut over 40 minutes and added a happy ending. The original reels were destroyed, a move Welles called cultural vandalism. If you can't serve the learners the rest. What's haunting is that multiple people who attended that single early screening described it as more powerful than Kane. The pacing, atmosphere, and tragic arc were said to be devastating in a way Hollywood couldn't stomach. All that remains today are production stills, memories, and Welles's own rage. Could that version have changed cinema history if it had survived? Little Shop of Horrors 1986, original cut. Test audiences hated the real ending. Frank Oz's original Little Shop of Horrors ended with everyone dying. Audrey gets eaten, Seymour follows. The plant takes over the world. It was a satirical takedown of greed and fame, in line with the original off-Broadway show. When this version screened to test audiences in San Jose, the response was overwhelmingly negative. Viewers were stunned, even offended, by the nihilistic conclusion. Warner Brothers panicked. The ending was scrapped, and a new one, where Seymour saves Audrey and defeats the plant, was hastily shot. The original cut was thought lost for years, until a black and white workprint surfaced. In 2012, it was finally restored in color. But what most people don't know is that the version screened that one night in San Jose was longer, included more apocalyptic destruction, and a different final scene with the plant bursting from underground. Why was that cut destroyed, and what made it so disturbing that even dark comedy fans rejected it? Brazil 1985. Original cut, screened once, then shelved by the studio. Terry Gilliam's Brazil was never meant to have a happy ending. His original cut, known among insiders as the Love Conquers Nothing version, was a bleak Orwellian spiral into madness and submission. It concluded with the protagonist trapped in a fantasy world created by torture, a visual descent into hopelessness. Gilliam managed to screen this original version once, in 1985, to a university film class in Los Angeles, without studio permission. The buzz was immediate. Students leaked details of the nightmarish ending, which 20th Century Fox found too dark, too surreal, and unmarketable. In retaliation, the studio recut the film with a new ending that suggested the character escaped. Gilliam fought back by taking out full-page ads in Variety asking, "Dear Sid Sheinberg, when will you release my film Brazil?" Eventually, a compromise was reached, and the director's cut made its way to DVD. But the original single-screening cut remains a whispered legend, never officially released or reconstructed. Was it the director's purest vision, or simply too dystopian to survive Hollywood's optimism complex? The Exorcist III, 1990, original cut, buried after studio panic. William Peter Blatty had one rule when he directed The Exorcist III: no exorcisms. The story was psychological, subtle, focused on guilt and evil as intangible forces. The original cut, shown to executives in a closed-door screening, reflected that vision. But their response, "Where's the exorcism?" Panicking. The studio demanded a new climax. The result was a last-minute, slapped-on exorcism sequence that Blatty loathed and which required recasting, reshoots, and rewrites. His original cut, which he titled Legion, never saw public release. Despite being nearly complete, in 2016, a director's cut cobbled together from VHS workprints was released by Shout Factory. But it's still not the full version shown in that original screening. Some scenes remain missing. Dialogue is patchy. Tone shifts. What did that first version truly feel like? Only a handful of executives and early crew members ever saw it. And to this day, horror fans debate, did we lose a masterpiece to studio fear? I Am Legend, 2007. Original cut, a bleak ending that never saw wide release. When I Am Legend first screened for test audiences, it featured an ending that flipped the story's entire moral center. Instead of Will Smith's character dying a martyr, he came to a chilling realization. He was the villain, the legend among the infected. In this version, he lets the infected go. And the final scene suggests their society is more organized than humanity imagined. Audiences rejected it. They wanted hope, not existential dread. Warner Brothers quickly demanded a reshoot, resulting in the explosive martyrdom we saw in theaters, but that first version was shown once, and only once, in a private preview, though it's available as an alternate ending on the Blu-ray. The full original cut with tone, pacing, and score aligned to that bleak vision has never been released. Ironically, that version is more faithful to the 1954 novel by Richard Matheson. Critics who later viewed it in private called it a tragedy disguised as sci-fi. Would audiences have embraced a story that asked, what if we were the monsters all along? The New York Ripper, 1982, original cut, removed after one screening in Italy. When Lucio Fulci's The New York Ripper was screened in its original form in a private Italian test screening in 1982, it caused an uproar even among hardened horror fans. The uncut version reportedly included scenes of prolonged sadism, most of which have never surfaced again. The audience response was so negative, bordering on furious, that Fulci himself withdrew the cut from distribution. The edited theatrical release was still brutally violent, but lacked the infamous scene involving a razor and a mirror, which test audiences said made viewers physically ill. According to rumors, a distributor threatened to abandon the film unless that scene was cut. Fulci's vision, he claimed, was to push viewers to confront misogynistic violence, not glamorize it, but no one seemed willing to confront it. The Italian censorship board refused to approve the original cut, and, despite multiple home releases over the years, that original screening version has never resurfaced. Some say it was destroyed. Others whisper it was privately preserved in Fulci's estate, lost after his death. Is the missing version too extreme, or simply too honest about the depravity we choose to ignore?